Hello everybody, my name is Pat. This is a new YouTube channel that I'm starting about music, hoping to do reviews and countdowns, rankings, talk about different bands. I listen to a lot of death metal, hardcore, metalcore, grindcore, you know, anything in that realm, punk. I think you have a pretty good sense of the music I listen to just from this first video. It might be a little bit more slated to certain genres than others, but the theme of this video is going to be top music of the first half of 2023, so first 6 months. Well, we just passed, well, we're almost through July, so this video is coming late, but I'm copying a lot of YouTubers who did a best of the first 6 months. Heavy Therapy is one of them. I also noticed Metal Meltdown did one of them. I really like that guy and all his reviews, so thought I'd just do one on my own. So here we go. Before we get into it, what we're listening to is the band's called Black Breath. I gotta avoid the glare there. This is Sentenced to Life. This is a 2012 album, so been about a decade now. Came out on Southern Lord, kind of sort of metal, but punky, hardcore, crusty, a little bit more in the metalcore vein, kind of along with a lot of the bands that came out on Southern Lord in this era. Big album in my life, really always loved this album. Just got it from a friend who was visiting, gracious enough, picked it up at a store and gave it to me. I have their last record on vinyl, which was called Slaves Beyond Death, but this is really their best album, so if you're into this band at all, they're not active anymore, and so, you know, but they're pretty classic, so that's what's playing in the background. Okay, so for this ranking, we are going to do LPs only, so there's going to be a lot of EPs and 7 inches and stuff like that. I'll probably do a separate video on that because, God, there's been just great stuff this year, especially in the hardcore world, but they're just like the format's kind of 7 inch and there's just been so much of it, so I'm focusing on just LPs now, and this is only first 6 months, so anything that came out January to June. This month, we've had some killer releases. Just listened to the Outer Heaven album, really good. End Rain is another band I really like. Well, they're new, but they released a record I really like. But all that stuff came out in July, so it's not making this list. We're just going to do first 6 months, and it's going to be a top 12. I couldn't narrow it down to 10. Everybody does a top 10, but whatever. So mine's going to be a 12. I'll try to go fast, not to keep the video too long. But here we go. And also, this is in no particular order, just... I think the album I like the most, I kind of saved for very last, but other than that, I don't really know where these would shake out in like a rankings, so don't read into like, I don't know, not that anyone here is going to like look at my first couple albums and think they're ranked lower, but this is a good example of that. This record would probably be towards the top of my list. This is Deathgrave is the name of the band, and the title of the album is It's Only Midnight. Came out in April of 2023. On the record label Tank Crimes. So Tank Crimes is a Bay Area, I think they're Bay Area, they must be Bay Area, based record label. Put out the Necrod albums. I think it put out Terminal Nation's last album. But this band has, as its bassist, as its guitarist, the guitarist is Greg Wilkinson, who's sort of a really important figure in the Bay Area for all these kind of bands that are coming out of the Bay Area that are death metal bands, because he does the production for all of them. He's also just famous in his own right as a musician. His band Brain Oil is a really big band. He's also now the bassist for Autopsy, which is obviously like crazy classic band, and they just released an album last year that was really good, but this is his newest project, and it's really fucking well done. It's kind of like death metal, I guess, but like with a lot of grind mixed in. So it's got this like dual lead vocals, kind of the high and low that kind of go back and forth, which I love, sort of good cop, bad cop type of shit. But it just knocked me on my ass. Every time I listen to it, I hear something new. One of the like really cool things that they do is, I don't even know how they do it, honestly, because I don't know enough about music, not being one myself. I'm just like a pure consumer, but there's like these wailing siren sounds that come out through it and just give you like an overwhelming sense of dread. I just think it's so cool and it's so unique, and I hadn't seen that before. So this band actually came out to, I live in Sacramento, that's where I'm shooting this video from. They came out, did a show in Sacramento, were really great, kind of almost stole the show. It was with Necrot though, and Necrot's always great, and Mortiferum, so I mean they're playing with great bands, but for being one of the openers, I was just really blown away by them, got to pick up the album, so really cool band, check them out, Death Grave. It is their second LP, they have another one too, so if you like this, go pick up the first one. The album is called It's Only Midnight. Okay, second up is Void Ceremony. All one word, Void Ceremony, and the album is called Threads of Unknowing. Also came out in the month of April of this year on 20 Buck Spin. God, how to describe this band? They're kind of, it's just amazing musicianship, really jazzy. I mean, it's death metal, obviously. I guess some people might call it like progressive death metal, I guess, but it doesn't feel like progressive to me, like where they do really weird stuff with the songs. It's just really kind of based on musicianship and kind of odd arrangements, song structures that kind of like throw you off in certain ways. I mean, it's not going to be like your kind of normal, predictable death metal or whatever, which don't get me wrong, I love, but this is like a really sort of unique band where the musicians are really good. I think like Faceless Burial, if you listen to Faceless Burial, they're kind of close to this, maybe a little more hard-hitting than this. This is a little jazzier, but Faceless Burial I always thought is kind of like the closest thing we have to death incarnate. Every death metal fan has to love death, as we all do, as I do. And I think this band gets kind of close too. I mean, nobody actually can do death, but they're kind of doing that kind of arrangement thing, and this album's really good. I'm not sure if it quite beats their debut. Their debut in 2020 was called, hold on, let me just look it up so I don't screw this up. Entropic Reflections Continuum Dimension Unravel. I think I like that one just a little bit better, but I'd have to kind of listen to this more to determine, because it's really, really solid. There'll just be like guitar solos kind of coming out of nowhere that are really well done, and so definitely love this record. It's gonna be a top pick of the year for me. Again, that's Void Ceremony, and the record is called Threads of Unknowing. Okay, so next up, the third choice that I have on my list is from a band called Spy. God, I love this cover record. There's a glare that I need to figure out how to get around, but it's got this great cover record, and then look at the back too. It's basically the backside of this guy lifting up the chalice in a different way. Anyways, this band is called Spy. The album is Satisfaction. It came out, I think I want to say it was June. It could have been May though. I didn't write it down, but it was either May or June this year on Triple B Records. Triple B Records is kind of, unless Closed Casket Activities counts, and we're going to talk about them, I got a couple things on there. It's probably my favorite hardcore label right now, just pure hardcore. They put out a lot of good stuff. It's all worth checking out. A lot of the stuff they've been putting out this year is more EPs and 7 inches, so a lot of it won't make this list, but this is technically an LP. That said, it's 10 songs, 14 minutes. I mean, this is straight to the point, just right in your face hardcore, kind of almost like a rock-based type hardcore at times. They're from the Bay Area, and they're kind of in the same line as some of these other bands that I kind of think of them all together, but they're all unique and have their own personality and things like that, so I hate to lump them, but they kind of all are in the vein of Gulch. So if you really liked Gulch, in fact, it's so funny, they're all like one-word bands that kind of, there's Gulch, there's Scalp, they just released an EP this year, there's Spy, there's Gel is a little bit different, but Tsunami, Maniac, I mean, there's all these hardcore bands now that kind of sound like Gulch. They're doing kind of the San Jose sound type thing, but it's really awesome, and it's addicting, and I can't get enough of this album. I just throw it on all the time. I wish it was a little longer, but that's a lot to ask, because part of the reason it's so nice and tight is that they didn't put any fluff on here. It's just great. It's just hardcore straight through. So The vocals are just so full and visceral. The guy almost does this like bark kind of screech sound. I've never heard anything like it, where it just sounds almost like a Doberman or something kind of screaming out. So really cool stuff. Again, the band is Spy, and the album title is Satisfaction. Okay. The fourth choice on here that I have is Judiciary. This is Flesh and Blood. Came out March 2023 on Closed Casket Activities. So I was just talking about that label. It's sort of a hardcore label, but also does a little heavier stuff, a little metalcore, maybe like some death metal influenced hardcore, but let me see here. This is like a gatefold LP, so you can kind of see the inside of it. Back is really cool. You got the like knife right there. Oh, there's a glare, but pretty much just hardcore. But they've always been a hardcore band. This album went in a much more, a little bit of a death metal influenced direction, I would say. Surface Noise, their one that came out in 2019, was a little more just straight hardcore. And it had like guest vocals and a little more gang chants and stuff like that. And this was a little bit more just pummeling you, still had breakdowns and things like that. But I felt like there was some death metal vibes. And then I saw like Banger TV was like doing a review of it, which is like, I mean, I love Banger TV, but it's like really rare for them to do just like a straight hardcore band. So it's definitely like infiltrated into the metal world, which is nice because I do think metal and hardcore have like a lot to learn from each other, and it's cool to see like Corpse Grinder is singing on these albums that are like hardcore albums and stuff like that. So it's just like one of those cool bands that's doing a little bit of like a crossover thing between those two genres. Really good production on this album. Production was Arthur Rizek, who's done like, I'm drawing a blank. I mean, he did like he's just like done so many. He's a legendary producer. He did like the Power Trip albums, things like that. Hold on, let me just look it up real quick so I don't sound like such an idiot. But, oh yeah, Trapped Under Ice, a little bit of the hardcore stuff. But then he does like, he's credited with Pissgrave, so death metal stuff. Jabalba was a big one. I think he did the last two Jabalba albums. So he's just an awesome producer, and he must play guitar, although I don't know if he's like in active bands, but he's credited here with playing a solo, I think, on the last song. So pretty cool dude. But yeah, it's a great band, great album. I've been bumping it all year. It's got really great kind of groovy breakdowns. My 2-year-old son, I'll put it on for him and he'll just like have to start shaking and moving his head because he loves it. So check it out. That's Judiciary with Flesh and Blood. Okay, next up, fifth pick is by a band called Torture Rack. Primeval Onslaught. This came out in June on 20 Buck Spin. Again, we're getting now back to more death metal. This is like pretty much just straight death metal, but I will say it is got some punky, grindy moments, and just like it just does just enough to throw you off, which I think a lot of death metal bands could like benefit from. No, don't get me wrong. I love like old school death metal. I love like just band, and I don't need it to be blackened or whatever else. Sometimes, I mean, if it is great, but this band on this record, at least, this is their, I think this is their second LP, if not their third. They've released some other stuff before. This is the first I'm really getting familiar with, but they have kind of mixed it up just enough to where it makes it like, takes it to another level for me. So for example, there's like a song, I think kind of halfway through, called Fucked by Death, and it's like 1:10 seconds because it's just like so punky, fast, grindy that it like kind of throws you off of the rest of it, which is kind of more like a groovy old school death metal record. So it's really well done. It's kind of a side project, I guess. I don't know if you really call it a side project if they're making like multiple albums, but it has two of the people in the band Witch Vomit. So Temper, who plays guitar in Witch Vomit, and then JG, who plays bass. They're back, I think, doing the same thing, guitar and bass, except that I want to say, I wish I knew more about this because Witch Vomit is one of my favorite bands. But JG, I think, sings on this. JG sings here, whereas Temper sings in the other one. So they kind of switched up the vocalists, but you know, 2 of the 3 members, it's a three-person band, so 2 of the 3 members are from Witch Vomit. So if you love Witch Vomit, you're probably going to love this too. But they do enough to distinguish themselves from Witch Vomit that it's not just like listening to another Witch Vomit record, especially the newer one. If you listen to the newer Witch Vomit, Abhorrent Rapture had a lot more doom and things like that. This is kind of going to be a little sped up, but for a little bit of the people like myself who love some of the faster stuff. So definitely check it out. Again, $20 spin, just everything they do seems amazing, but this is a really good one. Torture Rack, and the album title was Primeval Onslaught. Okay, so on to the 6th selection of the best LPs of the first half. This is Wretched Fate. The album is called Carnal Heresy. It came out on Redefining Darkness, which is a great record label. HM2 style Swedish death metal. Really kind of there's a lot of HM2 bands. Obviously, there's a lot of bands who are doing like kind of like Swedish death metal thing, but this one's got more like of the groove, and it kind of reminds me more of like the Bloodbath side of Swedish death metal, as opposed to just like, you know, Entombed and all the million bands who do like the Entombed thing. It's got a little more like bounce, that kind of Bloodbath vibe to it. So I don't know, to me that's pretty appealing because first of all, I just love like anything HM2. I mean, I almost don't mean to demean bands for being like, oh, it's Entombed worship. It's like, I don't really care. It's just like such a cool sounding guitar tone, and there's like a lot of good bands that are doing it well, but they are a little bit unique being on the Bloodbath side of that, I think. I think there's less bands that are doing that. And then Bloodbath itself is like a band that kind of still hasn't really captured those first 2 albums. I mean, those first 2 albums are sort of responsible for getting me into death metal almost. They were like some of the ones I listened to the most. And you know, Bloodbath released an album last year. I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't like quite on the level of those 2 albums. So if you're kind of like me and been a little bit disappointed with their later output, listen to a band like this and it scratches that itch for you. Really good. Love this cover. I love like what they did with like the band name, and then they got like, if you look kind of close up, it's got Carnal Heresy written on the coffin there, which is the name of the album title. I don't know why bands don't integrate their album title instead of just, usually it's just like set off at the bottom or whatever, like put it in your artwork, you know? But anyways, that's just a small thing. The artist, I just want to make sure, because this is probably my favorite art of the year so far. It's from an artist called Skadvalder. He also did the artwork for Cryptworm. So this album came out last year, but you can see it's similar art, but at the same time, it's not like it's the same thing. I mean, this guy's really, really fucking good at what he does. I mean, this is just like, this album, I mean, not only was the art insane, this was like one of the best albums of last year. This was Cryptworm, Spewing Mephitic Putridity, just an awesome, awesome new death metal band. But anyways, just wanted to show that off because this guy's art is amazing. But this was Wretched Fate. The album is called Carnal Heresy, and again, came out on Redefining Darkness. Okay, so that's the first 6, halfway through. Number 7, Jesus Peace, So Unknown. This is, God, what is there to say about Jesus Peace? I mean, Jesus Peace released their LP before this, which was called Only Self, was released, I think, in 2018 or maybe it was 2019. And then it was just, it's metalcore, I guess. It's kind of like hardcore. They have a lot of fans in the hardcore scene, but it's got enough of like heaviness and metal where they capture some of the metal fans too. So it's a little bit of a crossover thing, but just heavy as shit, breakdowns, which are awesome. And after Only Self, I remember just thinking like, when are they gonna make another record? When are they gonna make another record? When are they gonna make another record? And we finally got it. And I think like there was hype leading into it. And then all of a sudden I just don't hear people talking about this album. I don't know if it's like, oh, they signed it. This came out on Century Media, by the way. I don't know if it's sort of like, oh, they're on Century Media now, so they're bigger, or, I mean, they are huge. But to me, this album tops Only Self quite easily, I think. Only Self had these dynamic, so to speak, moments where it was like noise kind of coming in and doing like a noisy thing. So it was like more the artistic thing, and they cut that shit out on this one and just like did a pummeling crazy. Like, it hits harder in my opinion. I heard people talking on Twitter when this came out. There were a couple of people talking on Twitter like, oh, the breakdowns are predictable and this and that, and it's like, to me that's crazy. The breakdowns aren't predictable at all. I don't think any Jesus Piece breakdowns are predictable. If you do think that, then there's like, this style of breakdown is not going to be for you. You're not going to like anything Jesus Piece. So I don't know why they were. It was maybe like anecdotal. I just saw a small pocket of people talking about how this was like, wait, didn't measure up to Only Self, and I just couldn't disagree more. I think it's better. I think they basically cut out the fat, and then they just have these, you know, crazy songs. Some of the song lyrics are just, they're like political, but then also sort of have that hardcore metalcore introspective stuff, you know, like, I mean, FTBS, one of their songs just stands for fuck the bullshit. So, I mean, there's still like that kind of anger seeps through, but I really like it. It's one of my favorite albums. I think it lived up to all of its hype, and yeah, you should check it out. So that's Jesus Piece. The album is So Unknown. Came out in April on Century Media Records. All right, number 8, we're going back to 20 Buck Spin because, again, all they do is put out bangers. This is Command. It's with a K, like the communists would do. The album's called Death Age. Came out on March of this year. And again, the label is 20 Buck Spin. This band is from LA-based death metal, and their first record I was all over from the get-go because it was great. It was called, God, what was it called? Terrorscape, their first LP. I think that was 2020. Since then, they've released like another kind of thing that was sort of like a collection of demos, I guess, that predates that, which I still need to listen to. But Terrorscape is kind of like pretty classic, just like caveman shit, just old school pummeling. It's like 28 minutes or something like that, maybe 30 minutes at most, and just bam, just like rocks you that way. This one is similar. It's still that, but it's a little more, it's kind of doing a slower, groovier thing. It's kind of, it honestly is kind of like really, really well done bolt thrower worship. You know, when people say worship, that's kind of a, whatever, pejorative, but I don't mean it that way. I think a lot of bands try to do bolt thrower worship and suck at it. I mean, this is like really, really well done type bolt thrower stuff, and you know, with everybody's loves bolt thrower, but it's good to hear like a modern sound of it and hear a band that's kind of doing that slow, groovy kind of, you know, those riffs that just really hit the note in a modern production style, in a modern kind of band. Like, it's just great. Kind of that slow, creeping style of death metal. It's really unique and not hackneyed in that kind of way that like, oh, they're just doing bolt thrower again and stealing the riffs and everything else. It's and it's different enough from Terrorscape 2 where I'm interested to see where this band goes. But yeah, everything they've put out so far has just been excellent. So again, that's Command, and the album's called Death Age. Came out on 20 Buck Spin. All right, number 9 I don't have in physical form, so I will just put up a graphic of it. It is Active Impalement with Infernal Ordinance. Came out in February 2023. The label is Caligari Records. This band, I can't remember how I heard of them. It must have been one of my friends recommended them to me. Probably a friend of mine who listens to a lot of Death Doom. So it's Death Doom. They're a 3-piece from Nashville. And I haven't seen this like posted a lot or in sort of the circles I run. So it might be one of the more underrated albums of the year. It's just really, really solid Death Doom. It's the second LP from this band. They had one in 2018. And yeah, there's not much else to say. I really like the artwork too. It's really well done. I think it's been hard for me to find a physical version of this, but as soon as one pops up, I'm definitely going to get it. So that is Active Impalement with Infernal Ordinance, and it came out on Caligari Records. Okay, so we have 3 more. First of the 3 is by band Incendiary, and the album is called Change the Way You Think About Pain. This came out on Closed Casket Activities, and I don't have the month, but I think it was June. It hasn't been out very long. If it wasn't June, it was May. What is there to say about Incendiary? I mean, this is one of my favorite hardcore bands ever. Current, like, everything they do is just super solid. You know, I saw a few people talking about, oh, it's death metal inspired hardcore and this and that. I mean, it's pretty much straight hardcore. I guess you could say there's some death metal tones and stuff like that, but like, it's pretty straight hardcore. It is interesting, like Judiciary, they seem to be breaking through. I saw some people on, you know, the circles of death metal Twitter and things like that posting about it, so that's really cool to see. But if you have kind of come across this band, I would say maybe there's a little more metal in this album than the other ones. Maybe this and the last one. This is their 4th LP. But really, if you get to know this band and like them, just listen to all their records because they're all great. Their first one from 2013 is called Cost of Living, and it's just, I don't know, it's like a gem in hardcore circles. Everyone loves that album. My personal one is their second favorite. It's called Crusade. Then their, you know, the third album is great too, and this album, it just keeps going. I don't know what else there is to say. They have such a cool, there's the band. It's a cool photo on the inside of this like gatefold LP. But they just have like, they're political, the lyrics, they just have these like breakdowns or like moments where they slow things down and then they have like a signature line. It's just like so addicting, and I just think what they do is great, and I think it's such a good achievement too, because they're kind of a band who I think didn't get super burnt out on touring, didn't get super kind of kept things. They're from Long Island, New York, I think, or Staten Island, Long Island, probably Staten. I can't remember now. Probably Long Island. And they didn't do the touring thing, and they kind of didn't get too burnt out. And I think that's good because it's like pretty rare to hear 4 great LPs from a hardcore band. I mean, usually shelf life of a hardcore band is like 1, 2 tops. So really good achievement. You know, there's not much else I can say about this. It's just really solid hardcore. Just pick it up. It kind of embodies a modern hardcore sound in my view. So again, that's Incendiary, and the album title is Change the Way You Think About Pain. It's out on Closed Casket Activities. All right, number 11. And again, I'm doing 12 instead of 10 because I couldn't decide. This is Ascended Dead. The album title is Even Fall of the Apocalypse. It's out on 20 bucks spin, 20 bucks spin again. Nothing but bangers. I didn't know a lot about this band and this album until people, you know, I heard about it from stuff like these videos and Twitter and everything else, so I just decided to pick it up. I said, okay, what is everybody talking about? It's like, it's death metal, but I don't really know how to describe it. I hesitate to call it dissonant death metal or something like that because it's just like, it's really dense and has a lot going on, but it just is pummeling and punishing, and there's just so much going on. I don't even really know how to describe it, but like everything is kind of perfectly on point, especially musically. I think the vocals could go to a sort of different level sometimes. They sound a little bit to me kind of, you know, one kind of range and that's it, but everything else, just all the music on this album, down to the solos, down to the drum work, is just fucking intense and crazy. So I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like one of those albums you just kind of have to get and pick up. It's still within, I mean, I don't listen to like the really avant-garde stuff, so there's like, can't remember the band, but there's an album everybody's talking about now that's just like really, really dense and avant-garde, and it's not like that. It's still gonna be mostly a death metal record, but if you're like me and you kind of want that sound, but then, you know, something more dynamic than just like your typical OSDM sound, this album's up there. It's got that. So again, 20 buck spin, doing it right. They came by here and played a show, and I was so upset I couldn't make it. But it's a really good band. I'm excited to go back and check out their older stuff too, because they have previous LPs. But this one is Even Fall of the Apocalypse, and again, the band is Ascended Dead. So check that out. Okay, and then that brings us to the last one of this video, number 12. Cattle Decapitation is the band, and the album is called Terracite. Let's see here, this is a gatefold, although this is mostly lyrics. Just show you, I got a little bit of photos up there. So there's the back of, sort of the theme of this album is these little creatures, Terracite, that have kind of risen up from the wake of man destroying the earth and collapsing on itself, himself, herself, whatever you want to call it. I could talk about Cattle Decapitation like for an entire video. I think it's like a band that was like super, super important and already kind of legendary for grindcore. And then when they made Monolith of Inhumanity in 2012, I'm just one of the people that thinks that's one of the best albums that's ever been recorded. I mean, they were able to take that grind that they had, go in a totally different direction, fuse it with death metal, put different layers upon everything from vocals to guitar to everything, and they just entered this new direction. So this is totally consistent and in line with that. In fact, I think if you are like me and were a little disappointed with the last album, so since that album they had one other one that everyone seems to like, and then Death Atlas was the one before this, and I think 2020 or might have been 2019 Death Atlas was, and I would say it's polarizing among Cattle Decap fans. So some like me thought that it just lost an edge because what they did was they slowed some things down. They added a few more of the, like, people call them cleans. I don't know what to call them. It's like Travis's goblin voice, whatever it is. They added a little bit more of that, but it compromised some of the like blistering guitar and the really fast grind. So it was a little slower, a little more drawn out, but it was meant to be more emotional to fit with this theme they had of climate change. They had this misanthropic theme that was kind of building to that. So I get why they did it, and I still think it's like an important record, and it's still a great record. But I do think me and a part of the fan base was a little like, okay, they just lost a little something. Well, you enter this album and it's like back. It's back to being just blistering fast, and they were able, it's not only like back, it's not like those previous albums, it's just still like in that style, but also as great as them. So this is like, I said this was no order, but this is really my favorite record of the year, and it's not really particularly close because it's just, you know, it just does everything I want from Cattle Decap. I mean, it's crazy fast. It's way faster than Death Atlas. It might be their fastest album in this new death metal kind of era they're going into. It's very techy. Solos are crazy. They mix those goblin cleans, whatever you want to call them, in really well. There's great song arrangement. You know, they still have a little bit of the pattern of previous albums where like their very last track is a really long epic track, which is, let's see, what is that thing called? Just Another Body, which is great. So, and then lyrically the theme is just super cool. So if Death Atlas was sort of about man's destruction of the earth, now this Terracite thing is kind of rise up and take over the earth. Or here's I like the back shot of the insect almost even better. So, but yeah, there's just nothing else I can say about Cattle Decap. I mean, I will say I'm like totally in the tank for them, but I don't think it's like just a given they'll make 10 out of 10 records, because like I said, I was disappointed with the last one, but this to me is really a 10 out of 10. Like, it really gets there, and just everything on it is perfect. I don't think there's a fucking minute that's wasted on this album. So that's the top album for me, and that's the video. So again, this is the first video of what I hope to be a new channel. Hope to do many more. You know, in the comments below, let me know, what are your favorite albums so far of 2023? If you've listened to any of these albums, what do you think about them? Interact with me, follow me on Twitter, and I hope to discover a lot more music and share similar commentary with all of you. So thanks for watching, and have a good night.